Right here with me is Lily Fiatimochi, ready to rock and roll to ensure you have a pleasant Thursday morning, one that's informative, educative, and really entertaining. Good morning, Lily.
Good morning, Francis. Good morning, Deltons and Nigeria. And I hope you are doing okay. That's very cold Thursday morning. Well, I like the weather. At least I would prefer this weather to the very sunny and hot weather. So thank you so much for riding with us this morning on Morning Ride.
All right, weather for for Lilifet, you may say.
It's not a weather for no.
But there are people, different strokes for different folks. There are some who don't want to have this kind of weather, and it's good to see someone who also love it.
Yeah.
However, it is just be ready for it, because also on the headlines, somewhere around the headlines today, we heard about something concerning flood about to hit the country, several states, including Delta states. So while the rains are coming, be ready, because the flood might also come. But before we talk about the flood, let's flood you up with papers this morning. Stories making the front pages of our dailies this morning. We have several of them, many of them right here with us. The Vanguard, The Punch, The Nation, Nigerian Tribune, loads of them. We're going to kickstart this Thursday morning's breakfast show with paper review this morning. Olivia and I are going to look at the papers and talk about them thereafter. We'll start first with The Nation newspaper. The Nation newspaper is first to look at this morning with just one big headline. The Nation newspaper says, Lagos ushers in iconic projects. That's all on the front page of the Nation newspaper. And it's quite big. It says, welcome, Mr. President. I can see the governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, right there. And I can see a very wonderful message to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We know he was supposed to be in Lagos yesterday, but we'll talk about that one later. That's the only headline of the Nation newspaper this morning. All right, let's look at the next paper.
Okay. The Punch newspaper is next. It has a 2027 alignment. Wike-backed PDP fumes over Makinde ADC alliance plans. The writer says Oyo Governor Atiku, Obi, Kwankwaso, Amechi, Mark hold high-stakes meeting, more new platform. And then we have INEC registers 3.4 million new voters. Northeast logs nearly 2,000 explosions in 7 years. That's according to reports. Senate President, governors unveil Lagos mega projects. Youth rally Jonathan for 2027 presidential bid. Again, same thing they did in the last election. Okay. Bauchi APC split over governor's defection move. And lastly, 500 level students died during football match. Oh, that's on a sad note.
Yeah, very sad note. Let's look at our next paper this morning. We have the Nigerian Tribune to look at this morning. The big story on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune says, ADC Turaki-led PDP meet, explore 2027 options. That's on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune. It has riders here. It says, we paid solidarity visits to ADC. This is coming from PDP Group. Another writer says, Nigeria must commit to clean democratic space. From Makinde, Atiku, Obi, Kwankwaso, Wabara, Ghana, others, they attend the meeting. That's the big headline right here. The other story here says, ADC leaders protest at INEC headquarters. That's on page 3. Delta approves 200,000 naira monthly tax-free allowance for medical doctors on page 15 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper this morning. Just let them know that this story is now still, because it was out yesterday for us right here in Delta State. Federal government's 501 billion naira bond raises strong indicator of market confidence from Gencos on page 5. Look underneath the masthead of the Nigerian Tribune. Why Tinubu didn't attend project commissioning in Lagos. This is from the presidency. The writer says Lagos has raised the bar in quality project delivery. This is coming from the president, and you find that story on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. On page 4, pipeline surveillance contract. NAS committees pass vote of confidence in Chantita, NNPCL, others. That's the story there. And those are the stories making the front page of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper this morning.
The New Telegraph is next. Atiku, Obi, Kwankwaso, others join ADC rally over INEC's decisions. Details on page 3 and 6. The writer says, party submits protest letter to commission. And, Mark, no cause for alarm, challenges natural part of growing institution. Other stories making the New Telegraph. Middle East crisis, Iran does Strait of Hormuz over Israel. Attacks on Lebanon. Iran closes Strait on Hormuz over Israeli attacks on Lebanon. Details on pages 2 and 3. Trump accuses CNN of picking fake news from Nigerian news sites. Wow. Why would they think they picked it from Nigerian news sites? All right, pipeline surveillance. NAS dismisses petitions against Apollo's firm. Details on page 5. INEC urges fair, accurate media coverage of 2027 polls. Details on page 4 and 27. GENCOs confirmed participation in FG's 3.3 trillion naira legacy debt payments. Details on page 8. World Bank projects Nigeria's inflation to ease to 14.9% this year. Writer says lowers SSA's growth forecast to 4.1%. Middle East ceasefire crashes Nigeria's crude price by 26.9. On 2027 election, it says ADC, PDP leaders meet, may forge alliance. Ex-US diplomat urges global focus on Nigeria over alleged judges' manipulation. You can get the details on page 3, 4, 9, and 10. The writer says INEC what's that?
They're very, very hard to explain.
It's very
you might let it go. You just have to let it go.
So I'll just let it go. So that's it on the New Telegraph.
All right, that's the New Telegraph newspaper. Well done for squinting very well on that particular paper. Daily Sun is next, and we have several headlines here. ADC, Mark, Atiku, Obi, others protest at INEC. The writer says, insist on Amupiton sack. Let the man handle his office now. How long before he's being asked to leave the office? Well, we'll find out. You'll find out if you check out the Daily Sun newspaper and see the story yourself. At the top strip, we have 2027 PDP ADC leaders meet, may forge common front. That's at the top strip of the Daily Sun newspaper. Other stories here, just by the side of the photo speak, we have Plateau relaxes curfew in just now dusk to dawn. That's on page 27. On page 4, police raid Enugu criminal hideout, arrest suspect, destroy drug banks. Also on page 4, terrorism, 4 convicts bag life imprisonment. And finally, on page 25 of the Daily Sun newspaper this morning, Dangote refutes fuel price hike as US-Iran war enters ceasefire. Oh, I missed the story. That's not the final story on the front page of the Daily Sun. The story here says, World Bank, Nigeria, others under pressure as debt, inflation threaten growth. Those are the stories making the front page of the Daily Sun newspaper this morning.
The Guardian newspaper is next. Opposition explores options as ADC, PDP question INEC's neutrality. Details on page 6. Akpabio commissions Lagos project, task states on modern Nigeria. That's on page 7. On page 29, 2 years later, activists, community urge military to release Okwama detainees. World Bank multi-dimensional poverty threatening Nigeria's economic potential. That's on page 6. Finality of Supreme Court ruling does not translate to infallibility in public eye. That's on page 7. You want to understand that story, You can grab a copy of The Guardian. 2027, don't give power to APC by boycotting polls. Adebayo urges Nigeria. Details on 3. Page 6. Nigeria making progress, not on the brink of collapse. FG assures.
Amen.
NCAA warns of flight delays, cancellations during rainy season. Details on page 5. CSOs, youths storm JEC's office, urging him to contest. That's Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. They are urging him to contest for the 2027 election. I already know he's going to say no, so there's no need. All right, that's it on The Guardian.
All right, let's look at the Daily Trust newspaper. See what's making the front page of the Daily Trust this morning. The big headline, you can see it bold on screen. 2027, ADC, PDP close ranks. That's looking interesting. At the top strip, we have Nigeria's inflation remains high despite rebasing coming from the World Bank. Another story here says, Nigeria not collapsing, FG replies CSOs. And the answer to that is amen, because we are optimistic about the growth and the sustainability of the nation called Nigeria. Underneath the photo speak, just at the bottom strip, we have Fagore Garu touted for Kanu deputy governorship. All right. At the bottom strip, Tanzania president orders officials to travel by bus amid fuel shortages. I gathered that the president had to also cut down on several costs as well. Bauchi APC dividend over Bala Mohammed's defection bid. And then this story here, finally on page 23, Tinubu absent as Akpabio commissions Lagos projects. Okay, those are the stories making the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
The Daily Independent is next. PDP ADC leaders meet over crisis in parties. The writer says Atiku, Obi, Mark, Aregbesola, others protest at INEC headquarters. Tight policy, energy volatility stall credit growth in Nigeria. Lawyers query 135 billion naira for election litigation. And that's on the 2027 poll. Health diagnostic accuracy in Nigeria declining. That's according to the NBS. Nigeria generates 1.49 trillion naira from CIT in fourth quarter 2025. In major capital markets boost, Nigeria regains frontier market status. That's on 7. And on page 6, CVR phase 2, Jigawa, Lagos, Kano lead as INEC records 3.441.121 registrations. Okay. That's it on the Daily Independent.
Let's look at the Vanguard newspaper. I think that'll be our last paper this morning. Maybe we'll find out. The big story here on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper says ADC lists 6-point demands at INEC protest. ADC lists 6-point demands at INEC protest. I'm quite curious to know exactly what these demands are. That's just the major story on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. If you look at this, there are several riders to that story, so I'll just read them out. Atiku, Obi, Kwankwaso, others lead protests in Abuja. Don't kill democracy. Obi, Amechi reject one-party rule. No cause for alarm over ADC crisis, David Mark assures. PDP ADC leaders hold closed-door talks. INEC populated by card-carrying members of ABCs coming from Senator Marafa. Okay, and then there's a picture of the Commission of Projects in Lagos, and that was done by the Senate President, Senator Babio. We hope that we see how that one goes. Let's get back to the studio. If there are other papers to look at this morning, let's get back and have a little tete-a-tete over these stories that we just seen this morning. I'm quite excited for Tanzania.